Hey guys, tonight we enter a world of vows, silence, and sore knees. You're about to become the kind of man who owns nothing, says little, eats less, and still somehow gets yelled at before breakfast. The year is 1143. The abbey stone walls are slick with damp. Outside, the world might still be sleeping, but inside, a bell tolls with the kind of authority only medieval metal can manage. You flinch awake, heart thudding. No alarm clocks here, just the relentless clang of obligation. You've got exactly 4 seconds to sit up straight, swing your feet over the side of your straw-stuffed mattress, and try not to scream as your toes touch the icy stone floor. Welcome to monk life. This is no grand Benedictine monastery, mind you. You're a poor monk, Cluniac maybe, or Augustinian, tucked away in a lesser priory where even the rats look down on you. Your bed is more sack than mattress, tucked in a long, cold dormitory shared with 30 other snoring, twitching brothers. The air smells of mildew, wax, and something suspiciously cabbage adjacent. You stand, stretch, but not too much, lest you appear indulgent, and shuffle into your habit. It's rough wool, scratchy, smells faintly of goat. You wrap your cowl tight, tucking in the edges as Brother Anselm coughs behind you like a dying bellows. He always coughs at dawn. Some say it's the damp, others think it's guilt. No one asks. There's no talking, by the way. Rule of Saint Benedict. Silence is holy, and holy is, well, enforced. The monk to your left tries to nod a sleepy greeting. You both realize mid-nod that's technically a breach. You look away quickly, already bracing for the guilt. Your feet carry you down the stone steps with practiced reluctance, one slippered shuffle at a time. You can hear the bell echoing through the chapel now. Matins calls, the first of many daily prayers. It's still dark out, and the corridor torches are barely sputtering. A draught cuts through your habit like a blade. By the time you enter the nave, your breath is visible in the air, coiling like incense. The pews are lined with bowed heads. Brother Petrus is already there. He never sleeps, possibly because he's terrified of going to hell. The abbot stands near the altar, eyes closed, face like carved oak. He opens one eye the moment you enter. You feel it land on you like judgment. The chanting begins. Latin, of course. You join in despite your cracking voice and the way your stomach grumbles like an angry saint. The hymns are slow, repetitive, intentionally hypnotic, designed to focus the soul, or maybe to drown out the bodily complaints. Your knees complain first, then your back, then your eyes. You glance up at the stained glass, but the early light hasn't reached it yet. Just silhouettes and cold shadows, and still the chanting continues. An hour in, your legs have gone numb, and you're wondering whether it's a sin to think about warm porridge during psalms. Historians still argue whether the monks of your order were ever allowed to have personal thoughts during prayer. You suspect the answer is no. Finally, mercifully, Matins ends. But don't get excited. You're not free. You're funneled straight into lauds, the next prayer service. It's shorter, yes, but only slightly. By now, your body's in a state of half-frozen meditation, which the prior would call devotion, and you might secretly call mild dissociation. You notice Brother Michael has dozed off standing up. His head bobs slightly, like a medieval dandelion. No one calls him out. He'll be punished in ways subtle and inconvenient, extra garden duty perhaps. Or worse, he'll be placed next to Brother Thomas at supper, whose table manners are a known penance. When lauds finally ends, you file out in silence. No one speaks, not because they're holy, but because they're tired, hungry and acutely aware that breakfast is not exactly something to look forward to. The wind slips through the courtyard like a pickpocket, stealing warmth from under your robe. A rooster crows somewhere nearby, confusedly late or prematurely enthusiastic. You rub your eyes and try to remember why you joined this place. Was it faith? Poverty? Family pressure? Maybe you wanted to escape something or someone. Whatever your reason, it's too late now. You're here, a monk, a cog in a sacred sleepy machine. And you've only been awake for 2 hours. You shuffle back across the courtyard in silence, the sky now a pale iron gray above you. The abbey bells have stopped, but they still ring inside your skull, one long, mournful note after another. You file into the chapel again for prime, the third service of the morning, because 2 clearly weren't enough to kick off a productive day. This one's shorter, blessedly, but your knees still ache from the last round. You sit on the cold wooden bench, avoiding eye contact with the abbot, the crucifix, and Brother Michael, who is quietly weeping from sheer fatigue. You pretend not to notice. And then, it's time. The best part of the morning. Not breakfast, no, you're not that lucky yet. No, it's the silent walk to the chapel for work assignments. In this place, silence isn't peaceful. It's thick, like smoke. Every shuffle of feet, every creak of floorboard sounds like a betrayal. No one dares cough. You breathe through your nose. You've gotten good at that. The hallway to the chapel narrows unnaturally at the entrance, like it's trying to discourage your passage. You're not even surprised anymore. The walls are ancient, damp, and decorated with crumbling saints who all look disappointed in you. The candles flicker with judgment. Inside the chapel, you kneel. Again. You don't question why. You just do it. Obedience is everything. Obedience is life. The prior stands before you holding a sheet of vellum. It contains names, tasks, fates. One by one, he reads them aloud. Brother Petrus, kitchens. Brother Thomas, infirmary. Brother Anselm, chickens. Brother Hugh, cloister sweeping, chapel dusting, then matins cleanup. You try not to visibly react. That last bit means you'll be scrubbing dried wax from the floor on your hands and knees. Again. But worse, you'll miss breakfast. Again. You give a slight bow. Any more would be performative. Any less would be rebellious. The sweet spot of monkhood is knowing exactly how humble to look without being suspiciously holy. You pick up your broom and begin the long, slow sweep of the cloister walkways. The stone floor crunches beneath you. Dirt, sand, fallen leaves, and the occasional suspicious feather. You pass Brother Anselm, who is attempting to herd chickens. He is losing. You exchange a silent look of solidarity. Monk to monk, man to poultry victim. By the time you reach the chapel again, you've developed a theory that the entire abbey is tilted slightly downhill. Everything rolls to one end, including dust, wax, and your faith in the afterlife. Inside, the chapel is quiet again. Holy quiet, threatening quiet. You begin scraping wax from the floor tiles with a blunt blade. Your knees ache within seconds. You knew they would. You shift, try to balance weight between knees and elbows, and immediately regret it. A thin film of cold, sacred dust now coats your sleeves. You sneeze, you pause, you hope no one heard that. You resume. The job is thankless, but someone will definitely thanklessly check it later. Historians still argue whether tasks like these were meant to build humility or just punish fidgety novices. Either way, it works. You've never felt less important in your life. Hours pass like molasses freezing in a chalice. You scrape, sweep, shuffle, and inhale so much incense dust, you start wondering if that's why saints hallucinate. Occasionally, you spot the gleam of stained glass as the sun struggles to rise fully. It's beautiful, yes, but cold. So cold. And you're still hungry. Eventually, a bell rings again. You glance up like a dog hearing its master. Time for breakfast? Please let it be breakfast. You tuck your broom under your arm like a spear and march toward the refectory in silence. The hallway there is long and narrow, designed more for penance than practicality. You pass a tapestry that depicts St. Anthony smiling beatifically as he resists temptation. You've always been a little skeptical of that story. Anyone smiling that much clearly wasn't offered cheese. At the refectory door, you pause. You wait. Not out of reverence, but because you know the prior's about to emerge. He does, right on cue, looking as if he hasn't blinked since Easter. He inspects your hands. They're dirty, of course. You've been cleaning the holy wax of 12 saints for the last 2 hours. He says nothing, just nods toward the door. Inside, the refectory smells edible. Not good, not bad, just edible. That's a win. You sit on a narrow bench, bow your head, wait for the abbot to signal the prayer. It comes. You mumble grace through dry lips, and only then can you reach for the wooden bowl placed in front of you. Breakfast. You stare into it. Stale bread. A thin, greasy broth. Maybe turnip-based. Maybe onion. Maybe despair. You chew slowly, pretending this is fine dining. You glance at Brother Thomas, who seems oddly satisfied. You judge him silently. Across from you, Brother Michael tears his bread into exact cubes before eating them. You've always found that suspicious. The reader of the day stands at the front, reciting scripture in Latin. You've learned to tune it out, a sort of survival reflex. It helps that he mispronounces infirmus every single time. You've developed an internal drinking game for it. Not that you'd ever play it. Alcohol is forbidden, mostly. By the end of breakfast, you're slightly less hollow. Not full, never full, but less ghost-like. You give thanks, silently, again. And then it's time to rise, file out, and begin your actual duties. Because monk life waits for no man, and definitely no monk. You step out of the refectory still chewing the last bit of crusty bread, which at this point feels more like a jaw workout than a meal. The broth's already a memory, a warm whisper in your belly, gone far too soon. It's now mid-morning, the time when most people in the outside world are starting their day. For you, it's already felt like half a lifetime. You take your assigned path toward the work courtyard, feet dragging just enough to still qualify as reverent. Today's main chore? Chapel dusting, again. But first, you're stopped in the corridor by Brother Samuel, who hands you a mop with an expression of weary doom. That means one thing. There's a spill somewhere that smells like either wine or something previously alive. You do not ask which. You mop the corridor, careful not to let the bucket clatter. The silence is sacred, and Brother Jerome once received 2 days in solitary for sneezing too loudly during Lent. True story. As you clean, you spot a spider the size of your thumb crawling across the stones. It pauses, looks at you, and continues without fear. You respect its confidence. Your reward for finishing the spill patrol? A return to the scriptorium? That hallowed chamber where backs go to die and handwriting becomes a matter of eternal salvation. The scriptorium is a long, narrow room with tall windows that let in barely enough light to see, but somehow always enough to blind you when the sun hits just right. You sit at a slanted desk made of uneven oak, your inkwell beside you, your quill ready for battle. Today's task, copying a passage from Gregory the Great. again. You take a deep breath, dip your quill, and begin. Beati pauperes spiritu. You write carefully, one painstaking letter at a time. Ink smudges slightly, and you resist the urge to throw the page into the fire, which you can't because A, there's no fire, and B, fire is for privileged monasteries with actual firewood. You continue, slowly, precisely. The letters must be uniform, the lines straight. Any error means starting again, no erasers, no mercy. Some monks go blind in here, others go mad. Brother Lucian once swore the letter Q whispered to him. He now gardens exclusively and refuses to touch vellum. A whisper behind you. The prior enters, inspecting your work. He looks, he sniffs. He walks away without comment. This is high praise. You almost allow yourself a moment of smugness. You copy until your fingers cramp, your wrist twitches, and your eyes blur. You try not to rest your head on your arm, though you're deeply tempted. Across the room, Brother Henry is trying to scratch his back with a feather. It doesn't work. You empathize deeply. Midway through the passage, you realize you've written day with a slightly off E. You stare at it like it insulted your mother. You could leave it. Pretend it's a regional flourish. Historians still argue whether such quirks were accepted or if they led to public shaming. You're not ready to risk it. You start the page again. By the time you finish your third copy, the bell rings again. Relief? Not quite. It's time for manual labor, a medieval euphemism for things that involve mud, bones, or both. You hand your page to the supervising monk who nods and tells you, "Less wobble in the P tomorrow." You smile like that's useful feedback. Then you go outside. The garden is soggy from yesterday's rain. You're handed a crude hoe and pointed toward the herb plot. Your job, uproot weeds without disturbing the medicinal roots. Easier said than done when everything underground looks like witchcraft and worms. You kneel and dig. The sun is now weakly showing itself, more insult than comfort. You sweat under your woolen robe, which traps heat about as well as it traps pleasant smells. A bee buzzes by your ear and you flinch, mostly because last week you got stung and accidentally whispered a curse word. Brother Samuel still hasn't let you forget it. As you pull out weeds, your stomach grumbles again, loudly. A nearby novice hears it and smirks. You consider revenge, then remember you're a monk. The appropriate response is forgiveness. You forgive him later, much later. A small pile of weeds begins to form. You arrange them artfully, as if the Virgin herself will inspect them. That's what desperation does. It makes you seek validation from saints who likely never gardened a day in their lives. And then it happens. You find a turnip, a real, actual, misshapen but edible-looking turnip buried deep in the dirt. You stare at it like it's the Holy Grail. You're not allowed to eat it, of course. It goes to the kitchen for sharing. But still, it feels like you've discovered gold. You carry it gently to the kitchen door, where Brother Merrick accepts it without a word. You're about to leave when you spot something on the kitchen counter. Cheese. Not a lot. Just a small crumb. But cheese. Your eyes meet Brother Merrick's. He sees you seeing it. There's a silent moment of understanding. You're not getting the cheese, obviously, but the fact that you saw it and that it exists makes this the best moment of your day. Back outside, the bell rings again. You wipe your hands, smear your robe with dirt, and prepare for sexed midday prayers. You walk back toward the chapel, thinking not about God or Scripture or your eternal soul, but about cheese, because you're only human. Even in the 12th century, even in a monastery, the chapel looms again, stone and silence swallowing you as you step into its cool shadow for the fourth time today. The bell has rung for sext, the midday prayer, and you file in with the other brothers like sheep returning to the fold. Except some of the sheep are half asleep, one is limping, and at least three smell unmistakably of compost. You kneel. Again. Your knees don't even bother protesting now. They've given up. You're convinced they've either developed calluses the size of chicken eggs, or they've simply died, and no one told you. This time, the sun slants in through the upper stained glass windows, illuminating dust motes like they're dancing spirits. You'd almost call it beautiful if you weren't so deeply annoyed by the warmth that touches everyone except you. Somehow, you always sit in the cold patch. Historians still argue whether this was deliberate seating by priors to test humility or just medieval HVAC inefficiency. The prayers begin, Latin chants you've heard so many times, your lips move by reflex. Your stomach, of course, chooses this sacred moment to announce itself again with a growl so profound that Brother Thomas shoots you a look. You ignore him. The man once ate an entire boiled beet and didn't even flinch. You try to focus on the chanting, on the holiness, on the grand weight of monastic tradition and salvation. But then the words blur, your mind drifts, and there it is. Roast goose, crisp skin, fat glistening, garlic and herbs stuffed where the sun don't shine. You shake your head, mortified. That's definitely a sin, probably a venial one, hopefully not mortal. You whisper a tiny apology to the ceiling and glance upward, half expecting the Virgin Mary to raise an eyebrow. She does not. As the final amen echoes through the chapel, you file out once more. The silence now feels heavier. You're starting to suspect it's not just for spiritual discipline. It's so no one can complain aloud about the lunch you're about to endure. The refectory, when you reach it, smells almost exactly like it did during breakfast. Damp wood, boiled legumes, and disappointment. You sit at your assigned bench. The same one. Always the same. Next to Brother Jerome, who has not spoken a word to you in 4 years, and across from Brother Matthew, who coughs into every meal like it's part of the recipe. You bow your head for grace. The same passage is recited. You wonder how many times one can hear the same prayer before their soul starts reciting it without them. Then comes the bowl. You look down and sigh. Peas. Again, not even the fresh kind. These are the kind of peas that were probably peas last week and have since been reheated to the point of spiritual ambiguity. You poke at them with your spoon. They do not poke back, which is a small mercy. You eat slowly, mindfully, like a monk is supposed to. But inside, you fantasize about salt, or even pepper, the occasional flake of cheese, something, anything. As you chew, the reader stands once again and drones on in Latin. Today, it's a passage from the Rule of Saint Benedict. You know it by heart. You could chant it in your sleep. You probably have chanted it in your sleep. One line catches your attention, though. Idleness is the enemy of the soul. You snort quietly. If that's true, your soul must be doing just fine. Next to you, Brother Jerome finishes his peas, closes his eyes, and briefly looks like he has achieved inner peace. You suspect he's imagining roast goose, too. Once everyone has eaten, you perform the silent signal to indicate you're done. A slight nod, a soft closing of your bowl, a whispered burp of defeat. Then you rise and help collect the dishes. The bowls are made of wood, long worn smooth by generations of monks chewing bland mush from them. You wonder if anyone's ever carved a secret message underneath. You make a mental note to check later. Once the dishes are stacked and the tables wiped with musty rags that smell like old soup and older monks, you're dismissed. Briefly. For about 10 minutes. You go outside and stand in the sun. Just stand there. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. You just stand. It's the highlight of your day. But like all good things, it ends. You hear a bell. A different bell. You turn around slowly. It's time. Confession practice. Not real confession. Just the prep. The reflection. The sitting still and listing all the things you might have done but aren't sure practice. You trudge back into the main hall and sit on a bench so narrow it may qualify as a medieval torture device. You close your eyes and think. Did you break silence today? No. Did you disobey an order? No. Did you think about roast goose during prayers? Maybe. You add it to the list. As you sit in forced reflection, a noise breaks the holy silence. Brother Merrick's stomach, loud, glorious, like the trumpet of some malnourished angel. Everyone pretends not to hear it, but one monk, a novice, smirks. The prior sees it. The prior makes a note. The novice will be assigned something unpleasant tomorrow, probably manure-related. You say a quick mental prayer for his soul and his boots. Eventually, the prior claps his hands, and that's your cue. Reflection time over. Sins collected. Guilt harvested. You stand. There's still half a day left. You're not sure if you'll survive it. But then again, you've already survived peas, and that's no small miracle. You emerge from the hall of confession reflections, like a man acquitted, but not quite forgiven. There's no absolution yet. That comes later, in actual confession. But you've mentally cataloged your failings for the day, and it's an exhausting list. The next bell sends a jolt through your bones. This one has a different tone. Sharper, more earthy. You know what it means. Manual labor. Part 2. You trudge across the gravel path toward the lower garden wall, where the abbey's tools are kept. It's amazing how quickly the body forgets it's sore when the mind knows what's coming next. You glance around, hoping for some light chore like herb gathering or bucket refilling. Nope, not today. Today, it's grave digging. The cemetery is behind the abbey, tucked into a slope of land where nothing grows but stubborn weeds and rumors. The earth is damp, recently churned, and it smells like metal and decay. Brother Oswald is already there, holding 2 spades. He's a tall man with arms like tree trunks and the emotional expression of boiled cabbage. You nod at him. He grunts. You take the shovel, brace yourself, and begin to dig. It's not for anyone in particular, not yet anyway. Monasteries like yours dig graves in advance. It's practical, efficient, macabre. You were disturbed by it your first week here, but now it's just another Tuesday. As your shovel sinks into the earth, your mind drifts. You think about how long it takes to dig a grave. The answer is longer than you'd like, but not long enough to stall the inevitable. Brother Oswald doesn't speak, which you appreciate. The rhythm of digging is meditative if you don't think too hard about the purpose. Dirt piles up beside you. The smell of damp clay fills your nose. Somewhere nearby, a crow caws once, like it knows what you're doing. It probably does. Your hands blister slightly around the shovel handle. It's the 4th time this month. The blisters heal, then they return. Like penance, like taxes. Halfway through the dig, you pause to wipe your brow. The sun is warm now, high and unapologetic. Your robe sticks to your back like wet wool wallpaper. You want to take it off, but modesty and the prior's likely wrath keeps you swaddled in obedience. A curious tidbit flits through your mind. Some medieval monks believed that bodily suffering brought them closer to divine truth. You'd like to have a word with those monks, a shovel-sized word. When the grave is nearly shoulder deep, Oswald gestures and nods. It's good enough. You both climb out, panting slightly, covered in earth. You smooth the edges, you mark it, then you walk away. Lunch wasn't long ago, but your stomach still whispers its dissatisfaction. You try to ignore it. You've become good at that. Your next assignment, printed on a sloppily inked vellum slip handed to you by a passing novice, is garden duty. You sigh. Not because you mind the garden, it's one of the few places where beauty still exists, but because you know what garden duty means in monk code, latrine compost rotation. You grab a wheelbarrow, a heavy sack of decomposed waste, and your last shred of dignity. All three are on their last legs. The path to the compost area is muddy, as always. You squelch through it, pushing your barrow like some underfed Sisyphus. Once there, you shovel the waste into the designated trench, being careful to avoid splashback. The smell is biblical, in a bad way. You're halfway through when Brother Felix arrives. He's been on latrine duty all week. His beard looks like it's been filtering incense smoke since Easter. He nods to you. "Any worms?" he asks, voice hushed. You pause. "4." He nods again. Good sign. You're not sure if it is, but you take it. As you work, Felix talks softly, one of the few monks who dares to during labor when the prior's not watching. He tells you that last year, a compost pile spontaneously steamed in winter, and the brothers took it as a miracle. They called it the warming of St. Cuthbert. It still gets mentioned during long silences. Finally, the waste is spread. The tools are rinsed in a bucket that probably hasn't seen fresh water since Advent. You dry your hands on your robe, which now smells of exactly what you think it smells of. You return the wheelbarrow. You return the shovel. You return your soul to your body. Then you sit, just for a moment, on the edge of the well wall in the courtyard, back against warm stone, robes damp with effort. You close your eyes, and then, of course, the bell rings again. None. The next prayer. You rise, stiff, quiet, dusty. Your life is run by bells. You used to count them. Now you just follow. They lead you through the hours like a leash, and you've stopped pretending you can tug back. You re-enter the chapel. The shadows have shifted. The space feels different now, warmer maybe. Or maybe you're just delirious from heat and compost fumes. You kneel. Again, you chant. Again. Your voice cracks on the third psalm, but no one notices. Or they do, but they're too tired to care. At some point during the final line, your mind drifts so far you forget what you're chanting. You blink, shake it off, and keep going. No one says anything. You're not the first to lose focus. You won't be the last. This is monk life, and you're still surviving it. The chapel empties again, and you step back into the courtyard with legs that feel like overcooked root vegetables. The sun is lower now, casting long golden shadows across the mossy stone paths. The air has that odd, almost romantic stillness that comes in late afternoon, just before the day starts to cool. And yet, you have a problem. You're hungry again. Not in the, oh, I could snack kind of way. No. This is the kind of hunger that makes tree bark look interesting. You've started ranking your fellow monks based on how edible their robes look if cooked long enough. Brother Felix, for example, definitely a stew candidate. You try to pray the thought away. It doesn't work. You head back toward your assigned corner of the monastery, where you're expected to tidy the chapel candles, clear matins leftovers, and, most cruelly, scrub the wax caked onto the pulpit base. which seems to reproduce like heresy in summer. It's in this mental and physical state that you approach Vespers, the longest prayer service of the day. But first, before you can re-enter the holy space, you pass the kitchen doorway and pause. There's a smell. Bread. Fresh. You inhale. You don't even mean to. It just happens. Somewhere inside, an apprentice is baking early for tomorrow's feast day. That scent? It's warm, yeasty salvation. You stop for a moment, eyes closed. Somewhere deep in your mind, a choir of angels sings. Then a voice. Keep walking, brother. It's Brother Matthias. The kitchen door shuts in your face. You do what you're told. You always do. But your soul stays behind, pressed against the smell of imaginary butter. Back to work. The chapel is dim now, lit only by the slowly flickering glow of beeswax candles and late summer sun slipping through colored glass. You kneel and begin scraping wax again with your dull blade, praying under your breath that one of these candles finally just gives up and burns clean. But no, this wax fights you. It clings like sin. You mutter something unholy, just low enough that only the floor hears. Then, something worse. A thought. You remember the goose from earlier, the imaginary one. You try not to, but there it is again, waddling across your brain with crispy skin and stuffing. You try replacing it with something pious, a saint, a scroll, a hymn, but no, it's still goose. Congratulations. You've just committed thought sin number 5 today. Historians still argue whether monks were truly expected to be free of idle thoughts, or whether the confessional system existed precisely because idle thoughts were basically guaranteed. You hope it's the latter. As you scrape, a soft whisper reaches your ears. Someone's talking. You look up sharply. In the far corner of the chapel, 2 younger monks, novices, are whispering behind a pillar. You can't hear much, but one word stands out. Wine. Oh no. They're talking about the sacramental wine. The one kept under strict lock and key. The one reserved for special feast days and ceremonial rites. You're not shocked someone wants to sneak it. You're shocked someone said it out loud. One of them glances at you. Your eyes meet. He freezes. So do you. There's a long silence, thick with potential consequences. Then he gives a tiny sheepish smile, the kind that says, "You're not really going to do it." Probably. You nod slowly. Not yes. Not no. Just enough that he'll walk away and you won't have to report him. Because honestly, if they do it, and you just happen to be near the chapel at the right time, maybe they'll offer you a sip. You tell yourself you'll confess the temptation later, much later, after Vespers, after dinner, maybe after the end of the week. For now, the moment passes, the boys vanish into the shadows, and you return to your wax. When the bell finally rings for Vespers, you're already inside. Most of the others arrive on cue, folding into the pews like laundry into baskets. You join them, shifting your weight carefully to avoid putting pressure on your blistered knees. The chanting begins again, more solemn now, more final. The end of day has its own sound, low, slow, like the abbey itself is sighing. You close your eyes and drift slightly, not quite asleep, not quite awake. Somewhere between a psalm and a silence, you start thinking about life before the monastery. You remember a dog, or maybe it was a goat. Someone had a goat. It was loud and warm. You miss that goat. You remember someone laughing. You miss that too. You open your eyes again. The chant continues. You chant with them. The Latin is muscle memory now. Your voice, hoarse but steady, joins the others in an ancient river of sound. And just like that, the service ends. No applause, of course. Just the quiet shuffle of tired robes against stone as everyone rises. Outside, the sun is almost gone. The world is going gold to gray, and a breeze stirs the trees beyond the abbey walls. You glance up, watching a few leaves fall. They're free. You aren't. And yet, somehow, you've made it this far. One more service, one more meal, and maybe, if the wine thieves are generous, something to remember. Dinner is not dinner. Not in any modern sense of the word. It is the suggestion of dinner. A dim echo of what a meal could be if you had salt or joy or calories. You walk into the refectory with the other monks, heads bowed, eyes lowered, part reverence, part preservation of the fantasy that something different might be on the menu. You already know it won't be. But it's nice to pretend. The air smells exactly like it always does at this hour. Warm broth, wet wood, and the faint ghost of boiled cabbage. The table's already set with wooden bowls and cups, lined up with the same strict uniformity expected of your thoughts. You sit. The bench creaks. Brother Thomas sits across from you again, chewing even before the blessing begins. He always does that. You hate that you've noticed. You hate more that it bothers you. You're a monk. You're supposed to be above such things. The abbot gives the signal. A younger monk begins the reading, a monotone recitation from a Lives of the Saints text. Tonight's saint was martyred by bees. You try not to imagine how that even works, and instead focus on the wooden bowl now placed in front of you. It's peas. Again. You suppress an involuntary sound. Maybe it was a whimper. Maybe it was a prayer. There's also a hunk of bread, drier than the bones in the cemetery. And, this is the exciting part, a whisper of cheese. Not a cube, not even a slice. Just a sliver, like someone thought about cheese near your plate. And this was the shadow that remained. You chew everything slowly, as required. Monks don't wolf food. That would be gluttony. Instead, you masticate your meal like a cow contemplating the book of Revelation. You time your bites to the pauses in the reading, so no one hears you chew. The bread cuts the inside of your mouth slightly. You pretend it's penance. Brother Jerome next to you spills a drop of broth on his robe. You consider it a luxury. When you finish, you perform the ritual closing gesture. Fold your hands, bow your head slightly, and wait for dismissal. The monks rise. You follow, filing out quietly. Another meal survived. You're starting to realize this whole life is just surviving meals and prayers until your body gives out. After dinner, you're sent to candle detail in the smaller prayer room. That's where the older monks go when they're too feeble to kneel in the main chapel for long hours. You light the candles along the wall, using a long taper that always threatens to drip hot wax onto your knuckles. It does. Twice. The room fills with the smell of beeswax and dust. One of the older brothers mutters in his sleep from a corner bench. It's either Latin or a complaint about bread quality. You move on. On your way out, you notice something. Brother Merrick is missing. He's supposed to be assisting you. He's always early, always scowling, always quoting psalms with suspicious aggression. But not tonight. You pass near the hallway leading to the wine stores. You pause. There are voices. Low. Urgent. You recognize one. It's one of the novices from earlier, the one who whispered about wine during candle duty. Another voice is unfamiliar, breathless. Then the clink of glass. You lean a little closer, pretending to examine a nearby pillar like it has theological significance. Only a little, someone is whispering. It's for the Lord, and maybe for us. Then, laughter, soft, giddy. You back away, quickly, quietly. You're not part of this. But now you know, and that means you have options. You could tell the prior. That would earn you points. Discipline would rain down like holy fire. Or you could say nothing. Or you could be at the right place at the right time tomorrow and accidentally find a cup with your name not on it. You walk away quickly before temptation grows legs. Night is closing in now, and with it comes the nightly self-flagellation ritual. You don't have to participate every night. It's voluntary, supposedly, but the look from the prior when you accidentally miss it is worse than any whip. So you join the others in the candlelit corridor, just off the cloister walk. Each brother takes turns. Some mutter prayers, some wince in silence. Some, like Brother Felix, approach the whole thing with a disturbing level of enthusiasm. You receive the whip, leather, light, symbolic. You strike your back, once, twice, 3 times. It stings, mostly your pride. You glance at the others. Everyone is pretending not to count each other's lashes. Everyone is pretending this is about sin, not performance. Historians still argue whether most monks believed this act truly cleansed the soul, or whether it was just a way to feel something other than the gnawing hollowness of monastic repetition. You hand off the whip. Your turn is done. You walk back toward the dormitory, your back warm, your thoughts louder than they should be. Later, just before lights out, you're allowed a few personal moments. Some monks pray, some write, some just sit quietly, trying to remember a time when the days didn't blur together. You take out your one personal item, a worn scrap of cloth from your old life. You don't even remember how you kept it. Maybe the abbot forgot to confiscate it. Maybe someone let it slide. It smells of nothing now. It once smelled of home. You fold it again and tuck it into the hollow of your mattress. Carefully, always carefully. The dormitory darkens. Candles are snuffed. The sounds of night begin. Soft snores, shuffling feet, the settling of tired bodies onto tired cots. You lie back, the taste of peas still lingering in your mouth. And you realize you made it through another day. Just barely. But you did. You're half asleep when you hear the sound. Swish, swish, thump. It's the unmistakable rhythm of Brother Felix, warming up for his nightly spiritual performance. Self-flagellation, round 2. Yes, he's the type who does extra lashes for the sins of the world. He says this loudly enough to ensure God and everyone else hears it. You bury your face deeper into the thin straw pillow, which smells vaguely of mildew and last winter's plague season. But the sounds continue. They always do. Eventually, sleep takes you, but lightly. Your body stays on edge, like it's waiting for the next bell, or the next command, or the next draft to sneak in through the stone wall and gnaw on your toes. Morning returns too quickly. Today, you're not assigned to scriptorium duty. Today, you get to dig holes. This is either a blessing or a punishment, depending on how you look at it. On the one hand, the outdoors, sunlight, air that doesn't smell of damp robes and ink. On the other, holes. You and a few other poor souls are marched out to the abbey's lower grounds with dull spades, a wheelbarrow, and strict instructions to prepare the soil. No one specifies what for. It could be carrots, could be herbs, could be, well, you try not to look at the grave markers lining the outer wall. Dig until your thoughts are silent, says Brother Merrick. You've never been that quiet. The ground is hard. It hasn't rained in a week, and the soil clings to the roots like a sinner clings to excuses. You chip at it like a penitent sculptor, trying to carve salvation from compacted clay. Next to you, Brother Aldred sneezes violently and mutters something unrepeatable in Latin. You snort. You're not supposed to snort. It's too close to laughter, and laughter is dangerously close to joy. Brother Merrick glares at you. You return to digging. By midday, your back is howling. Your fingers are blistered. Your robes are streaked with honest dirt and the kind of sweat you're not supposed to acknowledge. You've cleared 3 plots. A 4th is requested. You dig. Again. Historians still argue whether monastic labor was truly seen as divine penance or just the medieval equivalent of free landscaping. Either way, your body is learning reverence the hard way. At one point, Brother Aldred leans close and whispers, "I heard someone got into the sacramental wine again." You freeze. It's a test. Has to be. But his grin is crooked and oddly conspiratorial. He adds, "If you ever want a sip of something that isn't broth, tonight, by the herb garden." You blink at him. He shrugs and returns to shoveling. You've been invited. Not exactly holy. Not exactly surprising. After lunch, which is more peas, now cold and slightly gelatinous, you're reassigned to the garden. Not as punishment. Not exactly. Brother Merrick says you've got green hands. This is a lie. Your hands are currently more brown and bleeding than green, but you nod like this is an honor and accept the trowel handed to you. The Abbey's garden is both sacred and deeply practical. Herbs for medicine, flowers for the altar, and a row of stubborn, ugly root vegetables for your supper. You weed carefully. One wrong pull, and the prior will make you confess to botanical murder. While working near the rosemary, you notice a small stone carving near the base of a wall. It's old, faded, a crude little figure that looks more pagan than Christian. Eyes too big, arms outstretched like it's waiting for a hug or a sacrifice. You glance around. No one else seems to see it. You touch it once, quickly, like it might bite. The stone is warm from the sun, strangely comforting. You file the memory away, like you do with all the quiet things no one talks about. As the sun dips low, you finish your garden work and return indoors, sweat damp and dust covered. Another round of vespers looms, but your mind keeps replaying Aldred's whisper. Tonight, by the herb garden. You try to dismiss it, but something about the thought, something small, rebellious, and undeniably human, clings to your ribs like a secret. You go through vespers with your usual tired rhythm. Kneel, bow, chant, stand, repeat. The prior reads from the Psalms with a voice that could sand wood. You try to care, but your thoughts keep wandering. After the final bell, you drift outside under the guise of evening contemplation. You're not the only one. You spot Aldred near the rosemary bush, exactly where he said he'd be. He's crouched low, half hidden by a hedge, holding a clay cup like it's made of gold. "Just one sip," he whispers, "for the glory of Saint Bibiana." You blink. "That's not a real saint," you whisper back. "Exactly," he grins, and hands you the cup. You hesitate, then sip. It burns, it bites. It's not good wine, but it's not broth, and that makes it divine. For one brief, flickering moment, you feel human. Not holy, not pure, not righteous, just real. You wipe your mouth, hand the cup back, and leave before temptation gets any ideas. As you walk away, you glance once more at the stone carving by the wall. It seems to be smiling now. You tell yourself it's a trick of the light. Back in the dormitory, you climb into your cot and pull your threadbare blanket over your aching shoulders. You survived another day, and tonight, you don't feel quite as empty. Back to the ink pots. Your spine protests before you even sit down. The long wooden bench in the scriptorium feels harder than usual today, as if it's been especially blessed with discomfort. The long oaken desk stretches out in front of you, covered in parchment, goosefeather quills, and ink that smells like vinegar and rot. Brother Odo, who supervises this sacred chamber of silent tedium, greets you with a grunt and the briefest of nods. You grunt back, almost reverently. That's the extent of socializing allowed here. You take your seat, your back screams, your blisters throb, and you still have dirt under your fingernails from garden duty. No time to clean them. You're already behind. Today's assignment, a Latin homily about sin, written in hand so small and perfect it could make the angels weep. Your Latin, middling. Your calligraphy, questionable. Your motivation, missing in action. But your fear of starting the page over, sharp and immediate, because one wrong blot of ink, one smudge, one misplaced Q, and the entire page is invalid, burned, tossed, punishment doled out in sighs and subtle humiliations. So, you dip your quill into the ink and begin. First line, cleaned. Second line, smooth. Third line, uh-oh. A fly lands on the wet ink. Just as your hand brushes it away, the quill splutters. The letter D smears into what looks like a demonic worm. You freeze. Brother Odo looms. You smile. Or at least you try. It's more of a grimace that says, I accept my suffering, but please don't make me skip dinner. He glances at the smear, glances at you, then nods. You exhale. Grace has been granted. Historians still argue whether monks took pride in this kind of work or simply endured it as part of their path to heaven. But right now, it feels less like divine purpose and more like calligraphy under duress. Hours pass. Your wrist cramps. Your fingers go numb. You finish a page and move to the next. You copy not just words, but mistakes, scribal quirks from the last poor soul who copied this text. You're part of a long line of misinterpreters, reshaping scripture one tired error at a time. By late afternoon, your back is hunched into a shape that would make your childhood self weep. Your eyes blur the M's and N's into a single wiggle. The candle beside you, guttering low, splattering wax dangerously close to the parchment. You've got exactly 10 minutes until prayers, which means 9 more minutes of copying. 1 minute of cleaning up. You use none of them wisely. Instead, you allow yourself a tiny rebellion. You turn the page and, in the bottom right corner, where the binding will hide it, you draw a snail. Not a big one, just a little guy, with a smile, a secret, for no one but you, and maybe God if he's bored enough to peek. Later, as you exit the scriptorium, you hear a muffled snap from behind a pillar. You pause. It's Brother Theobald, half hidden, rubbing his wrist and whispering something that might be a prayer, or a curse. He's crying. You freeze, unsure what to say, but he looks up and sees you, and it's like neither of you are monks for a moment, just two exhausted people stuck in wool robes, pretending perfection. You don't say anything, you just nod. He nods back. You keep walking, sometimes that's enough. The abbey bell tolls for evening meal. You've skipped 2 meals today by accident. Or divine design. Your stomach makes a noise like a dying sheep. But supper waits, more broth. Maybe beans, probably not cheese. You file into the refectory beside 30 other robes. You all smell the same. Sweat, ink, dust, regret. The scent of salvation. A reading from the book of Ecclesiastes drones through the hall as you eat. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Brother Aldred mouths the words like a joke. You nearly laugh. Nearly. You chew your gray bread and try not to think about the wine. After supper, you're sent to clean candle molds. They're made of rough clay and metal, heavy in your hands. The wax, still warm from recent use, sticks to your fingers in clumps. You scrape, you melt, you pour. A rhythm forms. Scoop, pour, scrape, wipe. Your mind drifts. To the snail, to the garden stone carving, to Brother Felix and his nightly lashes, to the wine, to the world outside these walls. You shake it off. The world outside is dangerous, filled with sin, with temptation, with women, with music, with color, with life. You're not supposed to want it, but tonight, scraping wax and staring into a half-filled mold, you do. You really, really do. By the time you collapse into your cot, you are candle-slicked, callous-handed, dirt-smeared, and starving for something you can't name. Tomorrow will be the same. But for now, you curl into your blanket, bury your face in the straw, and whisper your own made-up prayer into the dark. Let me not smear the ink tomorrow, and maybe, just maybe, let there be cheese. Whispers, warnings, and wine thieves. You're not supposed to eavesdrop, but you're also not supposed to be scrubbing the floor outside the cellar at this hour. So really, rules are already being bent. And what's one more? The voices are low, barely above a whisper, and echo off the cold stone like ghosts gossiping behind closed doors. You press your ear closer to the wooden door, pretending to work, your rag moving in lazy circles across centuries of grime. Said he's been at it for weeks now, always just after Compline. Brother Odo caught the scent last night, swears it wasn't incense. You freeze. Wine theft. In the monastery, stealing sacramental wine isn't just forbidden. It's practically an express ticket to excommunication, or at least several months of kitchen duty and soul-crushing prayer penalties. You adjust your position slightly and recognize one of the voices, Brother Matthew, a chronic whisperer, a coward with excellent timing. His companion is harder to place, but the urgency in their tone is unmistakable. He's hiding the empty flasks behind the old altar cloths, one says. Swore me to secrecy, but the door creaks. You leap up and slap your rag furiously against the wall, feigning devotion to cleanliness. Brother Matthew steps out, eyebrows raised, expression suspicious. You lock eyes. He says nothing, neither do you. And just like that, a pact is sealed in silence. Later that evening, you return to the spot under the guise of checking a creaking hinge on the door. It's a laughable excuse. Nobody cares about the door. But your curiosity is a persistent little devil. You lift the edge of a tattered tapestry near the altar, one that hasn't been moved since, you suspect, the First Crusade. And there it is. 3 empty flasks, one half full. You hold the flask to your nose. It smells like sour fruit and possibility. You hesitate, sip, run, confess. You take the flask, tuck it under your robe, and walk straight to the dormitory. Not because you're brave, but because you're terrified. Because the idea of sinning has started to taste better than the food. Back in your cot, you stare at the flask. It's heavy. You turn it in your hands like a relic, or a loaded weapon, or maybe both. Just one sip. You twist the cork and sniff again. It's not sweet. It's sharp, acidic, ancient, like it came from Noah's own vineyard. You tip it to your lips and then stop. Instead, you whisper something ridiculous. Deliver me from temptation, but maybe not tonight. You place the flask beneath your straw mattress. You'll decide later, or maybe it'll decide for you. The next morning, you learn that Brother Simon has gone missing. The same Simon who once slipped you a boiled egg on a fast day. The one who whispered crude limericks during midnight vigils. the one who hadn't looked well for weeks. The prior announces it calmly, without emotion. Brother Simon has absented himself from our community. We shall pray for his return or his penance. No one says a word, but the look passed around the refectory says it all. He's not coming back. Some say he fled to the coast. Some say he joined a troupe of traveling actors. One whispered he ran off with a widow from the village. But you remember the look in his eyes last week, the hollow behind his smile, the flask-shaped bulge in his robe. And you begin to wonder, is escape an act of sin or a desperate kind of holiness? Historians still argue whether monastic discipline in the 12th century created saints or simply broke men into shapes the church could use. That night you can't sleep. The flask still sits under your mattress, burning like a hot coal. Brother Thomas snores 2 beds over. Brother Odo mutters in his sleep, likely arguing with heretics again. Someone is crying softly, and no one has the energy to ask who. You rise, quiet as a shadow. You step outside into the courtyard. The night is sharp, full of stars. The abbey walls glow faintly under the moon. And for the first time in months, you don't feel like prey trapped in stone. You take the flask from under your robe, raise it to the heavens, and pour it onto the grass. Just enough to say you resisted. Just enough to say you could have. Then you return inside. Sleep comes easily after that. Not because you're holy, but because your defiance, however small, was finally your own. Vespers, the slow descent to night. By the time the bells toll for Vespers, your body is sore in places you forgot had muscles. Your back hums from hours bent over parchment. Your fingers are still faintly stained with ink. And your knees, well, your knees have become 2 small, resentful stones inside your habit. But there's no skipping prayer. Not unless you're dead. And even then, someone might drag your corpse to the chapel for attendance. You shuffle along with the others, all of you moving as one. Like tired birds following some unseen migratory instinct, no one talks. No one makes eye contact. You're monks. Monks do not frolic. Monks do not laugh after sunset. Monks most certainly do not collapse into a pile of hay and refuse to participate in the liturgy of the hours, even if you'd very much like to. The chapel is colder than usual tonight. Candles flicker in tall iron holders, casting long shadows across the floor. The crucifix looms above you all, like it's judging your posture. You take your place on the hard wooden bench, fold your hands, and begin the chant. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. It sounds holy, sure, but it also sounds like 40 starving men mumbling through chapped lips. You hit the right notes mostly. You mumble the Latin mostly. You bow when you're supposed to and cross yourself without poking your own eye. All in all, it's a decent showing. About halfway through the Psalms, your stomach lets out a noise so loud and hollow, it sounds like a dying goat. You freeze. Brother Peter turns to look, just slightly. His eyebrow twitches with the weight of judgment. You pray harder, not for your soul, but for your digestive system to shut up. The verses drone on, Psalm 141. Let my prayer be counted as incense before thee. You try to focus, but the words blur. You find yourself thinking about butter, not heavenly grace, not divine justice, just butter. Soft, golden butter melting on fresh bread. It's a sin. You know it. You're craving earthly pleasures when you're supposed to be lifting your soul skyward. But you've been craving butter for months. You're pretty sure even Saint Benedict had weak moments. Vespers ends with a long, slow pause. Everyone on their knees, heads bowed, waiting for the final amen. That pause stretches like old parchment. It's silent, but heavy. You're not sure if it's reverence or just collective exhaustion. Then finally, the bell strikes again. You rise. Your joints click like badly made hinges. Outside the chapel, the air has changed. It's cooler, softer, tinged with the scent of distant hearth smoke. Somewhere, someone is baking bread. Not for you, obviously. Probably for the Lord's table, or the local bishop, or one of those fat village priests with too much wine and not enough guilt. But the smell reaches you anyway. It's almost cruel. You sigh, deeply, from a place inside you where butter, sleep, and warmth used to live. A younger novice named Elias walks beside you as you head back to the cloisters. He's about 12. Still hasn't lost that wide-eyed look. He whispers, "Did you see Brother Theobald nodding off during Psalm 137? You frown, but not out of scorn, more out of envy. Was he? You murmur. His head bounced like this, Elias says, mimicking a slow bobble. I thought he'd fall into the candle. You almost smile. Almost. But then the prior strides past, his robes whispering doom. You both straighten and walk in silence again. Back in the dormitory, it's still too early to sleep. You light a candle, take out your stitching. Yes, monks stitch. Not all of you, but enough. It's not always about writing beautiful manuscripts. Someone has to keep your ragged robes from falling apart. You fix a seam near your hem. Tiny stitches, even movements. It's oddly soothing, like prayer for your hands. From across the room, Brother Odo hums something low. A tune that might have been a hymn once, or maybe a folk song from the hills. No one tells him to stop. Not tonight. Suddenly, you remember something strange from earlier. A tiny thing. A squirrel. You saw it during your walk back from the scriptorium. A little red squirrel darting along the stone wall near the herb garden. It paused to look at you. Didn't run. Just stared. And for a second it felt like a sign. Of what? You're not sure. Freedom? Madness? Even historians still argue whether medieval monks found true spiritual peace in seclusion, or if they were simply the most obedient prisoners in history. You blow out the candle, lie back on your straw-stuffed mattress. Above you, the wooden beams creak. A breeze whistles through the cracks in the wall. Brother Thomas starts snoring, of course. You exhale, long and slow. Tomorrow will be the same. But for now, there's the quiet hum of the abbey settling into itself. And maybe, just maybe, you feel the faintest whisper of peace. A secret glance at the world. You know you're not supposed to be here. Not now, not after Compline. But the world outside is calling, softly, like a song remembered from childhood. You slip quietly down the corridor, robes brushing stone. The other monks are already in their dormitory, the day sealed shut behind them with whispered prayers and heavy sighs. No one sees you. No one stops you. Maybe God is looking away for a moment, or maybe he wants you to look. The cloister door creaks as you ease it open, just wide enough for your thin frame. Outside, the night has settled like a wool blanket over the abbey grounds. The moon hangs low, casting a pale glow on the courtyard, softening every edge. You move silently, a shadow among shadows, until you reach the outer wall, the one you're not supposed to climb. But you climb it anyway. The stone is rough and cool under your hands. You've done this before, just once or twice, and always alone. It's not rebellion exactly. more like longing, a curiosity that never seems to go away. At the top, you settle onto the flat ledge, robe tucked beneath you, feet dangling over the side like a schoolboy. Below you, beyond the walls of the monastery, the village glimmers, candlelight in windows, laughter even. A lute playing somewhere, faint and off-key. You spot movement near the tavern. A couple dances outside, clumsy but joyful, spinning under the stars like they haven't a care in the world. And suddenly, you're not a monk. You're just a young man watching life happen. The sensation hits you like cold water. You miss it. All of it. Talking freely. Eating what you like, when you like. Touch. Noise. Choice. You try to remember the last time you laughed. A full, unguarded laugh. You try to remember what your mother looked like when she wasn't crying at the gates as you were led away at age 9 to take the cloth. It's all fog. That's what they don't tell you about monkhood. It isn't just giving up possessions or pride. It's giving up identity. You don't have a name here. Not really. Just brother. You don't even get a reflection half the time. No mirrors. No vanity. Just discipline. From the wall, you can see the river glinting like silver ribbon under moonlight. You used to swim in that river. It was cold even in summer, but you never cared. Sometimes you and your cousins would catch frogs and dare each other to kiss them. It occurs to you, suddenly, that no one inside the abbey has laughed about a frog in at least 10 years. Something flickers in your chest. Not quite sadness. Not quite regret. It's something older than both. A restless ache. Some monks call it acedia, the noonday demon, a spiritual sloth, a loss of purpose. But this doesn't feel like laziness. It feels like hunger, not for food, for living. Historians still argue whether medieval monastic life was a noble escape from corruption, or a highly organized spiritual prison, complete with rules, bells, and recycled cabbage soup. Looking out over the village, you start to suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. A dog barks in the distance. You flinch. Not because of the dog, but because you forgot how alive things can sound out here. Even a bark feels full of breath and heat. Behind you, the abbey looms, massive, silent, cold, a fortress of piety, but also of fear. You remember the story of Brother Lucian, who tried to leave 2 winters ago. He made it as far as the mill house before collapsing from fever. They brought him back in a cart. He never walked again. No one talks about him now. You sigh and let your eyes drift back to the stars. They're clearer out here, away from the candlelit haze of the cloisters. Do they look different to the villagers? Do they laugh under these same stars? Or do they curse them, drunk and broken, wishing for bread? There's no easy answer. That's the problem with truth. It's slippery, especially when it's filtered through silence and incense. Eventually, the wind grows sharper. The moon slides behind a cloud. It's time. You climb down slowly, joints stiff. Your feet touch the grass with a reluctant finality. Back inside, the abbey is deathly quiet. No bells, no chants, just the heavy stillness of sleep. You slip into your cell and lie back on your mattress. Your body is in the monastery, but your mind is still on that wall, watching the world. You imagine dancing with that village girl beneath the stars, just for a moment. Then you mutter a half-prayer, hoping it's enough to forgive a heart that still remembers how to dream. Cold supper and candle wax. The final bell tolls like a sleepy yawn across the abbey, low and slow. You know it's time for supper. Not that you're hungry. Or maybe you are, but you've learned not to trust your stomach. It's always growling. You could feed it a whole roast ox, and it'd still complain an hour later. You file into the refectory with the others, heads bowed, hands folded. Even this late in the day, silence is sacred, or at least strictly enforced. Candles flicker along the walls, casting tall, twitching shadows. The air smells faintly of smoke, old wood, and boiled roots. A single candle burns on the reader's pulpit, where Brother Julian, who has the smoothest voice in the abbey, begins reciting passages from St. Augustine. Again, it's always Augustine. Sometimes you wonder if he's the only writer who ever lived, or if the prior just has a thing for guilt and celibacy. Tonight's meal is more of the same: weak vegetable broth, a hunk of black bread that could double as a blunt weapon, and, wait for it, a single sad triangle of cheese. You try not to stare at it too long. It'll start to feel like mockery. Still, cheese is cheese. Someone must have donated it. Maybe a merchant trying to earn divine favor by giving monks expired dairy. That's how it usually goes. You eat slowly, chewing methodically. No talking, no glancing at anyone else's bowl, no second helpings. You focus on the rhythm. Dip the bread, chew, swallow. Repeat. A drip of broth lands on your sleeve, and for a moment you feel like a child again, clumsy and half-fed. The cheese is gone too soon. The broth barely warmed you. You shift in your seat, aware of the aching in your knees, the tightness in your shoulders. The body keeps track of your choices, even the holy ones. Brother Julian drones on. You half listen. Something about divine will and resisting temptation. You quietly pick at a wax drip on the side of your candle, rolling it between your thumb and finger until it curls like old skin. A drop lands on your knuckle, hot, sharp. You wince silently and press your lips together. No noise. Pain is part of the path. The monks beside you eat with blank faces, eyes half-lidded. Some look more corpse than man. Brother Elric is nodding off between bites. His spoon dips into the broth, pauses, and rises again like clockwork. But his eyes are closed, impressive in a grim sort of way. The scholar monk at the end of the table hasn't touched his food. He's scribbling on a wax tablet hidden in his lap, probably copying out some commentary on Deuteronomy. He'll sneak the cheese into his satchel and claim fasting. Classic. You briefly consider asking for it, then remember the vow of silence, the vow of humility, and also the fact that he once told on a novice for having a dream about a woman. You let him keep the cheese. The candles flicker again. The breeze from the open window shudders through the hall. Somewhere far off, an owl hoots. It feels ancient and wise and vaguely condescending. You feel yourself growing heavier. The food hasn't energized you. It's simply weighted you down. The kind of tired that makes your bones feel older than they are. The reader finishes the night's passage. The prior gives a single nod, and the monks rise in unison. Benches scrape stone. Robes rustle like dried leaves. You file out slowly, back into the corridor, your full stomach doing battle with your hollow spirit. You pass by the candle shelf and take one for your cell. It's short, nearly burned to the base, but you hold it like a treasure. It's your only light until morning. Back in your cell, you place it on the little ledge near your cot. The flame flickers as you settle in. You stare at it for a while. It dances, wobbles, leans toward you, then away, like it can't decide whether to stay or leave. Kind of like you. You reach for your wooden cup and take a sip of water. It tastes of the bucket it came from, old iron and moss. You don't mind. It's wet. It's cold. It's real. The candle wax drips again, this time onto your blanket. You watch it congeal, forming a hard little tear on the rough fabric. You think about that girl dancing in the village again, about the cheese, about the dream you had last week where you were back at home, running barefoot through a barley field, laughing at nothing at all. You don't write it down. You don't confess it. You just let it sit in your chest, warm and dangerous. Your eyes start to close, the candle a blur now, the room tilting gently. Tomorrow, it'll be broth again. Ink and prayers, chores and chanting. The cheese will be gone. The candle too. Only the stone walls will remain. And you. Confession and questionable honesty. You wake in the middle of the night with a guilty taste in your mouth. It's not real. More like a sour ghost of something you never ate, never did. Just your soul reminding you, confession's coming. Morning's not quite here, but it doesn't need to be. You already know. Tonight is the weekly ritual of whispered regrets. Time to dig through your mental pantry and figure out which sins to pull out for inspection, and which ones to hide behind the old jars in the back. You shuffle into the cold chapel with the others. No shoes, just the slap of skin against cold stone and the shuffle of habits brushing along the floor. It's still dark, but there's a small, warm light near the altar, where the prior waits, sitting like a hunched hawk, ready to pick at every morsel of your shame. One by one, the monks take their turn. Each steps forward, kneels, whispers. Sometimes there's sobbing. Sometimes just the quick rattle of rehearsed guilt. You wait at the edge of the candlelight, rehearsing your lines like a medieval actor with stage fright. What will you confess? Not the wine. You didn't drink it. You thought about it. You even watched Brother Thomas eyeball the storage room with the heavy key. But thinking isn't doing. Technically, not the girl in the village either. Not the way her hips moved when she danced. Not the way your body betrayed you when you remembered. That's not something you say aloud. Not to the prior. Not to anyone. You think about the smaller sins. That lie about being sick so you could skip latrine duty. That time you whispered during none. Just 3 words to Brother Elric. He farted again. That was funny. Almost worth the risk. Almost. Your turn. You step forward. Kneel. The prior leans down, and the top of his head gleams in the candlelight like a polished rock. You smell boiled onions on his breath. Divine justice smells earthy. You begin, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." Technically, he's not your father, but we're past labels at this point. I coveted Brother Anselm's blanket. His is thicker than mine. This is true. I let my mind wander during matins. I imagined warm bread. This is also true. You pause. The real sins are tangled behind your tongue, so you throw in one that feels believable, but safe. I may have allowed pride into my heart when my ink work was praised by Brother Hugh. A classic. Monks love the pride one. Harmless, vague, and technically accurate anytime someone doesn't spit on you. The prior nods, as if he's reading your soul like a grocery list. Bread, envy, lust, half a cup of lying. He gives the usual penance. 2 extra prayers before lauds. A reading of the Rule of St. Benedict. You fight the urge to sigh. It could have been worse. At least there's no flogging this time. You step back. Another monk takes your place. You sit on a cold bench along the wall, hands folded. Your heart is quieter now. Not empty, but slightly reorganized. You wonder if any monk has ever confessed everything. Every half-formed thought, every flash of doubt. Every second they looked at the stained glass and wondered if any of this really meant anything. or if it was just a way to get fed and avoid marriage. Historians still argue whether confession truly helped medieval monks with their spiritual lives, or if it was just an elaborate form of control, a way to keep the mind policing itself when the prior wasn't around. Either way, it works. You're already preparing next week's confession in your head. Brother Elric finishes his turn and sits beside you, eyes red. He sniffles once, and you pretend not to notice. His sins are heavier. You suspect he's still mourning the death of his brother, a knight who died in some faraway crusade. That grief doesn't fit neatly into confession. Too large, too quiet. Once everyone's done, the prior leads a short prayer. The monks file out again. Silence returns like a blanket, itchy and familiar. You walk slowly back toward the dormitory, arms crossed against the chill. The moon is high now, the sky a deep bruise of blue and purple. Stars blink like tiny witnesses. You try to feel lighter, cleansed, but mostly you feel reorganized, tidy. You've done your duty, spoken your sins, hidden the rest. Back in your cell, you sit for a moment beside your cold candle stub. No light tonight, just memory, just breath. You whisper to yourself, not a prayer, but a quiet truth. I'm still here. Then you lie down, wrap yourself in your thin blanket, and stare at the ceiling until your eyes stop wanting to. Sleepless, under God's gaze. The dormitory settles like an ancient beast, creaking once, then going still. 100 breaths echo in the darkness, slow and shallow, layered like a choir of ghosts. You're lying flat on your back, eyes open, staring up at a ceiling you can't see. This is supposed to be the quietest part of the day, the sacred rest before the tolling of matins. But you're not resting. You're surviving the final test of monkhood, night itself. Your blanket is no thicker than a shadow, and your straw mattress crunches with every twitch. You shift just slightly to avoid the lump where the stuffing's balled up, and the movement makes your knees bump against the sideboard. The impact is soft, but in a room where silence is holy, even breathing feels loud. Then Brother Thomas begins. It's not a snore at first, just a wheeze, like a bellows struggling to light a stubborn fire. Then a whistle. Then a full-bodied snort-gargle-growl combination that vibrates the wooden floorboards under your back. You clench your jaw, try not to laugh, or cry. Hard to tell what your body wants anymore. You turn to your side. Bad decision. Now your hip bone is digging into the straw. The cold edge of your wooden cot presses against your arm. You consider going to the latrine just for the warmth of walking, but you'd wake everyone. And the latrine is worse than this. The smell alone could end a novice's calling. So you stay, and you think. You think about Brother Anselm's feet. You share the bunk beside his. The man removes his sandals once a day, never more, and you're certain some medieval demons live between his toes. You try to pray for his hygiene, but it's hard to keep the tone reverent. You think about the wine cellar again, the key, the dusty bottles, the rich monks who probably sip once a year and forget they even have access. You think about the rule, the endless rule. Obedience, silence, humility. It's supposed to bring you closer to God, but tonight it mostly brings you closer to Brother Thomas's snot. You glance toward the window slit. No light yet, no cock crowing, just the dark, the breath, the cold. This isn't sleep. This is monk stasis, a spiritual limbo padded with guilt and aching muscles. This is where the real monastic life hides, not in prayers or fasting or copying texts, but here, in the vulnerable, sleepless hours, when you're alone with your own thoughts, your own body, and the ever-watching presence of a silent, invisible God. Historians still debate what kind of spiritual life the average 12th century monk truly experienced. Was it enlightenment born of isolation and discipline, or psychological stress masked by holy routine? The truth likely drips between those ideas, like candle wax onto an already scorched table. But tonight, you aren't a scholar. You're just tired, and your stomach is beginning to remind you that dinner was ornamental. You shift again. This time, you do it slowly enough not to squeak the cot. A success. You let your arms fold over your chest. That's the position they'll probably bury you in one day. You imagine your funeral. Solemn bells, a few muttered Latin verses, Brother Hugh pretending he liked you more than he did. You'll be laid in a simple pine box. No stone, no epitaph. Just dust to dust and an empty bed in the dormitory. Comforting in a weird way. Eventually your breathing slows. The ache in your limbs dulls into a background thrum. Thomas snores again, so loud it shakes your pillow. But now, it's just part of the noise, the music of monkhood. And slowly, without permission, your eyes begin to close. Tomorrow, the bell will ring, the cold will bite, the broth will disappoint, and you'll do it all again. Because this is your life, because this is survival. And now, as the last candle flickers out, and the cold stone of the monastery walls fades into the hush of your own room, breathe. You made it. Through the prayers and punishments, the fasting and failures, the silence, the chores, the whispered temptations, the aching knees, and the ever-watchful eyes of God, or at least the prior. You did what so many couldn't. You endured. Your robes may be rough, your belly empty, and your bones a little sore, but your spirit, still yours. The monks of the 12th century may not have had freedom or comfort, or even very many teeth, but in the quiet hours, wrapped in ritual and rhythm, they found a strange kind of strength, the kind you just felt, a resilience born not from power, but from surrender. Now as you lie there, cozy in your modern bed, maybe with a fan humming softly in the background and your phone charging nearby, let go. Let the past drift away like incense smoke, curling toward a vaulted ceiling. Let the old stone silence dissolve. Let the rhythm of breath carry you somewhere lighter, quieter, warmer. Tomorrow will come. But for now, rest. You've earned it. Sweet dreams.